coalition rebuilding in the Middle East. Open source intelligence from Ukraine suffers a vital setback. And Biden withdraws student loan forgiveness plans. This and more on Dangerous Waters. This is the Dangerous Waters podcast, where we dive deep into dangerous waters. I'm your host, Alex, and today we have a myriad of stories to cover. Once again, our highlight of the day is a coalition rebuilding in the Middle East. This alliance has the potential to completely redefine Middle Eastern politics and redraw alliances down to every country. And what this means is a potential for peace that we have never seen in the Middle East in a long time. This is really a culmination of multiple years of efforts, and we're finally starting to see results. Now, what is this alliance and what is the nature of this alliance? Well, this is really a group of countries who are tired of Iranian influence efforts in the Middle East. They are tired of Iranian proxies and terrorism, and they want to see a level of order backed by strong powers who are capable of maintaining peace and prosperity in the region. Now, what countries are involved in this? For one, the United States is one of the key power backers in this alliance, as well as Israel. And the US and Israel has always been a very strong and probably the most powerful combined force in the Middle East. However, now we are seeing the representation of other countries who actually under the Trump administration were previously already willing to partner with the US, but now more so than ever. This is an alliance of countries such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, and now Syria might also come into the picture as one of these players. Huge implications here because the Iranian axis, which they've built up over decades, which they've tried to encroach into Syria, they've tried to build networks into Lebanon to threaten Israeli interests and American interests by extension, is crumbling. There's no two ways to look at it. Iran's influence operations are not working out the way they wanted to. They have to completely rebuild a lot of these things, and it'll take time, a lot of time, and that is time that Iran does not really have on its side. They are struggling. They are at the point where they may consider developing nuclear weapons to compensate for this lack of geopolitical influence otherwise, and the regime is not really in a place where they feel safe going forward. Over the past year or so, we've seen Israel play a strong, monumental role in reshaping Middle Eastern politics as we know it, and this strength has really come at such a level that countries such as the United States, under the Biden administration at least, are working with Israel directly to ensure that these short-term gains will consolidate into long-term key strategic positions and key strategic alliances with other surrounding countries. Saudi Arabia also is now seeing a more friendly approach toward Israel, as well as the UAE and other countries who Trump were trying to collect into an alliance back in the day during the Abraham Accords, but were unfortunately derailed during the Biden administration. Now we are seeing that come back. We are seeing a comeback of monumental effect, so much so that currently, as of now, Iran's only real powerful proxy force at this point, the Houthis in Yemen, have been struck by both Saudi and United Arab Emirates forces. This is really a continuation of what we've seen in the past. There was a pause for multiple years, of the Saudis at least, in which they did not want to strike Yemeni's facilities anymore. This was also because of reverse incentives from Biden saying that if they continued to strike in Yemen, Biden would no longer supply weapons and infrastructure to the Saudis. But now we are finally seeing their action back. They have been in a civil war with really the Yemenis for a long time. They've been involved in the Yemeni civil war for almost a decade, and now this involvement is coming back. We are seeing more aggressive strikes from Israel. In fact, just yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel has announced that he's ordered the IDF to completely destroy key Houthi infrastructure. And at the same time, we are also seeing American forces striking Yemen in a stronger caliber as well, taking out military depots, all of these places. So this is really alliance building that we haven't seen in a long time. And with Trump coming into office soon, these gains will only become more consolidated and the maximum pressure campaign that Trump has against Iran and its proxies will only continue in strength. And this is really going to just combine these alliances even further and make sure that Iran does not have the ability to threaten Middle Eastern interests in the same way that they did before. For our next story, we have a pretty big setback in Ukrainian open source intelligence. There was a mapping group which provided real-time updates on the war in Ukraine, a group known as Deep State, and they have now been forced to shut down by the Ukrainian government, and many of their members, or most, I'm not sure how many, but they have been forced to mobilize and be frontline soldiers in the war. This is a really strong shutdown move by the Ukrainian government to limit transparency in the war. Daily, they have been working on trying to make the information space as clear as possible, presenting a neutral perspective. A lot of these mapping groups are pro-Russian. They show these gains that are somewhat unrealistic at times, but Deep State, this group has done a good job in trying to keep the mapping as accurate as possible, and they are even respected among pro-Russian analysts. This is a group that really seen widespread results and widespread respect from both sides of the war for their accuracy in the mapping. But unfortunately, they have now been shut down, and we are now forced to rely on less reliable maps for the future. Our next story is going to be about another Russian ship which has capsized in the Mediterranean Sea as it was en route to Vladivostok. The ship was carrying two massive cranes which were going to be used on the port of Vladivostok to help with shipping efficiency, while at the same time there were two 45-ton doors which were going to be put in a nuclear reactor project that they're currently building. So this is going to be a major setback for both the Vladivostok port development as well as the nuclear reactor facility that is currently being built right now. Vladivostok is a very key strategic position for Russia because it is really the only port that allows easy access of materials transported into Europe. So if they want to maintain trade with Europe in any capacity, they really have to go through the port of Vladivostok, which also they have strategic alliances with China to make sure that they have access to this port. So this is really a big setback for Russian trade, and at the same time, the Russian shipping industry is suffering from major reputational harm because of the large amounts of ships that have been having issues or failing or sinking in the past couple of days. For domestic news, our first story comes from Biden, who just withdrew student loan forgiveness plans, citing operational difficulties in achieving that process. They are now transitioning their efforts into making sure that those loans do get repaid by the borrowers. This comes at a time where Biden is really trying to consolidate his presidency and his legacy during the lame duck period, which is the period right after the election before the new incoming president comes in. And it really shows Biden's attitude about a lot of these things. His willingness to cancel out these programs that he's been desperately trying to push for the past 1 or 2 years shows that his true attitude about this has not really been one of forgiveness for borrowers. It really was a political gesture, and now that the operational inefficiencies, which are always there, now that that's being used as an excuse for shutting down these efforts coming into the future. To be fair to Biden, they were able to forgive a lot of loans from certain groups of people, but this was nothing similar to the type of student loan forgiveness that Biden promised in his 2020 campaign, wide-scale forgiveness for millions of borrowers. That never happened. Now, shifting our focus to Trump, we have new confirmations that Trump's plans of territorial expansion, especially in repatriating the Panama Canal as well as buying out Greenland, are 100% serious proposals by Trump. Trump has said that everything is for sale when you give it the right price. They're saying that the people in Greenland would be happy to join the United States as part of our nation. And this is really a very important strategic position, even though you might think, oh, it's Greenland, nothing ever happens there. However, if you go farther into the future, 2040 and beyond, major shipping industries are projecting that the Arctic Circle will become open for maritime trade at a much larger extent than it is now, which would give Greenland a strong status as a shipping hub for many of these ships traveling across the Arctic, especially as they come closer to the United States. So this is a strategic and very long-term type of thinking from Trump in trying to take Greenland. At the same time, the Panama Canal shows again that Trump is looking at the trading scene, and he is trying to take access of one of the most important ports in the entire world. These two gestures, Greenland and Panama, really do show his true intentions here. He really does believe this can be something that happens during his presidency, and we'll see what happens, but it really does show that he is very much in line with a strategic vision of the country in which we are really a trade empire. Let's get into rapid fire news. For our first story from BBC, Israel confirms it killed Hamas leader Haniyeh in Tehran. From NPR, 2024 will be the hottest year on record. From The Conversation, OpenAI's latest O3 model has reached a human level on a general intelligence test. And from AP, immigration drives U.S. population growth to the highest rate in 23 years, with the population now surpassing 340 million people. With that being said, thank you all for listening to this episode of Dangerous Waters. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. And as always, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you all in the next episode.